In this video, I'm going to be making a handmade leather belt out of a Wicked & Craig dark brown English Bridal, and I'm going to pair it up with antique brass hardware, including a antique brass roller buckle and some Chicago screws with a flat dome top, just to give it a little bit of a unique twist. This is a really rugged, everyday belt. I personally love this belt. I wear it almost every single day, and I'll show you guys what it looks like after about a year and a half of use versus this new one I have here in my hand. This one here is a size 36, so I'm going to show you guys every single step of the process, including measuring it out to make up that custom length, and let's get started. Now, just before filming this video, I put up this new rack in my really small shop because I really didn't have a place for all these belt straps, especially because I just got a full shipment, and that's not even all of them. Now, these belt straps, of course, I just hang up and I pull from anytime I get a belt order, and for this one, we're using our pre-cut template out of acrylic to mark our holes at the front end or the top end of the belt there, which is going to have a modern tip, and I'm going to punch out all of these holes with my 1/8 inch hole punch along with my rubber mallet. Now, I just slice off the tip, and you can see there that modern tip. It's just like an angular look. It's just a little bit more modern in my opinion, as opposed to more of an arrow tip or a square tip that you typically see. Now here I'm using my tailoring tape just to measure out from the middle hole all the way down to where the buckle meets the leather. So you can see this acrylic template here has that kind of oval cutout in the middle. You want to measure, in this case, it's a 36 belt, so the 36 inches all the way to where that center piece is that I'm going to cut out for the belt buckle. And here you can see me doing that with my punch. It's just going to pop out that little piece, and that's actually really hard to do with that tool because you got to punch through this pretty thick leather. I don't know if I said it in the beginning, but it's 8 to 10 ounce leather, which is the thicker leather that I use here at the shop. Typically I do a 3.5 to 4 ounce for most of my projects, 8 to 10 ounce for things like this, and 5.5 ounces to 6 ounces for desk mats. Now here's one of my new favorite tools. This is the master tool from Weaver, and it's just going to bevel both edges of the belt. You just pull it straight through, and it runs across a couple of blades in those little circles there, and you can turn the circle as the blades get dull. You do top and bottom for the belt, so here you see me doing the flip side. I just absolutely love this piece, and it just makes life so much easier. I don't have to break out the number 2 edge beveler to bevel it all by hand. It just takes a couple of seconds. Now, because it's a brown belt, I'm breaking out the chocolate leather dye. Now, typically I use a dark brown leather dye, but I am out of it, so this chocolate brown is pretty close. It's not very far off than a dark brown. It's just a little bit darker than the dark brown dye. Now here I'm just dyeing all of the edges, including the tips, front and back, top and bottom. Tokonole in my needle applicator, I just squeeze along the edge and then use canvas cloth to burnish it all to give it a nice glassy edge, and that's going to seal in that leather dye so it doesn't bleed on any pants or any skin or anything like that, and it's also just going to give it that glassy finish that you want out of a professional product. Here, I'm breaking out my 12mm Palo Santo French Skiver to thin out the leather at the end where the buckle's going to go, because holding over an 8 to 10 ounce leather onto itself doubles that thickness. It gets really bulky, so I want to thin that out there. Here I'm using the number 2 edge beveler that I just mentioned, also from Palo Santo factory, to bevel the belt loop. Now the belt loop is just a 1/2 inch thick, about a 1/2 inch thick, maybe a little bit less. I dye the edges, Tokonole canvas cloth, do the same exact process I do to the belt, but to the belt loop. Here I'm using a rotary punch to just punch out just really small, they might even be 1/16 of an inch holes to help stitch it shut into that, kind of cylindrical shape that it's going to need to be a belt loop. So here I'm using just a kind of wax thread. It's a nylon wax thread. It's not something I use for typical projects. It's just a little bit more, in my opinion, durable for something that's going to get pulled on over the long run. So you want that belt loop to last a really long time, and I think this thread in particular does a really good job on things like belts. You want it to be a little bit more rugged. And after that, you can see the finished product has sort of an X pattern on the back, which I think looks pretty cool, but you'll really never see it because it's going to tuck in against the belt. Here I'm going to slide that belt loop on. Antique brass roller buckle is my buckle of choice. I really particularly like the roller buckle. I think it makes it a lot easier to put on. Chicago screws are what's going to hold it together. Now, I don't use any Loctite or anything like that. If you use the correct post size with the correct thickness of leather, pair those two together and you get something that's really going to hold its place. And a flathead screwdriver is all you need to get that installed. From there, I just finish things off with my whiskey glass stamp at the modern tip end, and then the full 80 proof goods logo on the inside all the way toward the buckle itself. So not something you really see typically, but I just like to put the branding on there in case you forget. And there you have it. It's a modern tip belt, got the whiskey glass icon stamp on there, antique brass hardware, Chicago screws with the flat dome top that you put on with the flathead. I personally think it looks really good. Let me know in the comments what you think.